What's going on, Wolves and Warriors? My name's Jay Stewart, and this is the Better Body Academy podcast, the #1 show for those looking to permanently overhaul their mind and body without dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. We banish the fitness industry BS and replace it with science-backed strategies proven through countless client transformations. In the Better Body Academy, we help busy men and women around the world get unstuck and back into momentum so they start feeling strong and sexy again. Our mission is to transform 1 million lives, and you, my friend, could be next. And on that note, let's get straight into today's show. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is your podcast that you come if you're sick of the dumb diets, unsustainable workout programs. And in today's episode, guys, I'm going to be talking about a difficult one to talk about. And this is why most people's attempts to change fail. Why most people's attempts to change fail. I'm going to give you kind of, just some ideas on why this is actually happening. So potentially you can correct this in your own journey, or at least just start making some kind of gains towards correcting it. Now, before we crash into today's session, today's episode, I just want to thank the guys that have shared this podcast on their Instagram and Facebook stories. You guys are awesome, and it's helping us build traction in our movement. So thank you so much. So let's get stuck into what we want to talk about today. Why most people's attempts at transformation fail. I think when I look at where a lot of people are, they generally arrive in the Better Body Academy, and it's not as if it's the first time that they've tried to do a transformation, right? So secret head nod if you're watching live or you're listening at home. You know, have you been in a pattern where you've kind of gone on and off over a fair period of time? Maybe the time of which you've been off the wagon has shortened each time in between. That's a good result. But is it kind of like you've never felt like you've reached that point where you have permanently changed? And maybe you got really close and then something knocked you off course. Maybe you were there, but something kind of catastrophic happened in your life which puts you back a couple of steps. And look, this is completely normal. Our life is not meant to be perfect. To think that you're going to, scale through this journey from 0 to 100 and there's not going to be any bumps along the road is completely crazy. But what I want to talk about is, why is it that we are failing to get to a point where we feel like we're in control? We're no longer subject to what's happening in the world around us. How is it that we can reach a point where we are inspired to continue our journey over the long term? Where we feel like, yes, we are no longer a pinball in the way of life whereby things happen to us instead of us being in the driver's seat. And so what I want to talk about today is how, if you follow potentially what I'm offering you here and commence your journey, then potentially this can be something where you arrive at a destination where you feel like, I've now got this. I'm now in control. And that's a destination which a lot of people want to get to in their health, wealth, and their relationships. And it's very available to you if you understand the mindset shift that you need to undergo first, okay? If you understand that mind shift first, there is one fundamental change. And if you make this one fundamental change, you are going to see massive returns. Now, we've got a few guys watching live, and I'm speaking to a couple of my clients directly. Guys, heed my words. If you make this change, things will happen. Inside of the Better Body Academy, our program, I try to make it clear that, the journey towards, what you idolize as your perfect mind and body is not a linear one. If we look at all of our best transformations over time, what you can actually see is when you graph things like their weight and their waist circumference, the line's kind of like that. It's like wiggly and there's bumps in the line, and what matters is the direction. The trajectory over a long period is sustainable and consistent. Now, if we look at other people who just never get to where they want to be, there's one key observation that I make, and that is that they are looking at things in a short term. They see the Better Body Academy program, the phase 1 program, as a 16-week challenge, okay? I'm going to go and see how much willpower I can pull together for 16 weeks and go all in and watch what happens. Now, I want to give you an analogy as to why this does not work. Have you ever heard of these stories about people that win the lotto? Okay, win the lotteries. And these people aren't, they're not coming from rich backgrounds, but just all of a sudden some luck went their way and they won millions. And the news goes out, or the current affairs programs go out, and they interview these people, and these people are like, oh, well, I'm rich, I don't know what to do, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this and buy this. And then you hear the story about how in 5 or 6 years' time, they've got nothing again. There's another example of this. When I see and hear about high-prized sports people, footballers in the NRL, in the hockey, in the basketball, that are earning tons of money. In big paying sports, it might be millions a year. In the NRL, it might be $500,000 to $1 million a year. And then a few years after retirement, they are bankrupt. This is very similar to what happens in a man or woman's transformation journey. They're all in, they're riding the highs, but then when the highs finish, the lows are low and they're back where they started. How is this possible? Well, guys, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an insight into why this actually happens. And the one key point that I want to bring for you in this episode is that if you focus only on actions over your identity, you will end up back at the same place. I'm going to say that again. If you focus exclusively on your actions over your identity, you're going to end up at the same place. What do I actually mean by that? I mean that if you focus on doing without changing who you are and what you actually stand for in your life, you're going to end up back at the same place. I just want to get you to let that sink in for a moment. I think a lot of people, they come in and they start off with goal of, I want to lose X amount of kilograms or X amount of pounds. I want to look like this and I'm going to get there. And in every transformation, there are 2 journeys being had. There's the physical journey, which is mostly about your actions. It's mostly about what you do. Are you sticking to your calories and your protein targets? It's about, are you getting to the gym? And this can be done, this journey can be fulfilled through willpower almost alone. Okay? Willpower almost alone. I'm going to the gym every day, Jace. I'm sticking to the meal plan. I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing that and I'm doing that and do. These are all things that they are doing. They are actions. This is good, but when it's at the exclusion of your identity, who you actually are, it's not going to last. There are 2 journeys, as I said, the physical journey, which is about actions, and the mental journey. The mental journey is mostly about your identity. The truth is, identity is everything. Who are you and what do you stand for? Here are some examples. Are you going to the gym or are you a gym goer? Going to the gym is an action. Being a gym goer is an identity. Are you eating clean or are you a healthy eater? Are you just doing healthy things or are you healthy? There's a big difference there. One is the action, one is the identity. And this works in the converse as well. A lot of guys go through periods which is completely normal on their journey where they fail. They set some goals and they fail. They fall off the wagon or fall off the horse, as we term it. Falling off the wagon or falling off the horse, that's about your actions. That's saying nothing about you as a person. That's just saying you made an error of judgment, you made a mistake, you've fallen off. Becoming a failure is an identity. You see the difference here, guys? One's about your actions, one's about who you are. When we are in the zone where we have our identity lining up with our actions, that's when we feel in that flow state. That's when we feel that we are in alignment. When you are doing who you truly are, that's when you're in alignment. So let me ask you a question. For those of you that are parents, do you wake up every day and think, how am I going to be a good parent today? Or do you just automatically be a good parent? Now, I'm not saying that it's not hard. I definitely understand firsthand that parenting is hard at times. But I'm asking you the question, do you struggle with how to be a good parent, or you just be a good parent? The reason that you just be a good parent is because that's your identity. It'd actually be harder for you to be a bad parent than it would be to be a good parent. Because if your identity is that I'm a good parent, going out and being a good parent is an easy thing to do. I'll give you another example. Let's just say you go through a rough time in your relationship, but I asked you the question, are you a good husband or are you a good wife? You would have an answer to that question, which was either yes or no. And if you are, I would ask you every day, do you wake up in the morning and say, well, how am I going to be a good husband or a good wife today? Or do you just do it? Is it just somewhat automatic and habitual? And if it is the latter, that's because your identity is that you're a good husband and a good wife. So when it comes to our health transformation, the reason that most people never get to where they want is they never become a healthy man or woman. They never adopt that as their identity. They remain a healthy guy, an unhealthy guy that's trying to do healthy guy things. And when you have a friction between who you are and what you do, what do you think's going to win out in the long term? Think about it. If you have an idea that you are a very good parent, and then you go through a period of a couple of days where you're just not there for your kid, well, what's going to happen is your better identity is going to kick in. Let's talk about if you won the lotto and you had a bunch of money come into your possession. Would you be the sort of person that would spunk it or not? It would come down to whether or not you shifted your identity or not. Did you go from being someone who is middle class or whatever you currently are to, wow, I am now financially wealthy? This is why when people talk about using affirmations around abundance, having thoughts and visualizations and affirmations around abundance is aimed at trying to evolve how you think about yourself, how you hold yourself. For me personally, it's very easy to be healthy. I don't need to count calories. I don't need to jump on the scale. Nothing of that, because my core identity is that I'm just a healthy guy. And so it become easy for me to just be healthy. When we don't have this alignment, we call this self-sabotage. When we don't have this alignment, we call this self-sabotage. This is when you have something go really well in your career, but your core identity thinks, I don't deserve this. Like, why do I deserve this? Why do I deserve this abundance? I'm not that good. I don't deserve this. And because that's our conditioning, because that's our deeper identity, all the things that we did to get ourselves to the position of being brought the abundance that come to us, all of a sudden we stop doing those things because our core identity took over. Inside the Better Body Academy, we call this our autopilot. Our autopilot is our guiding tool that always keeps us on course to the man or the woman that we are. Does this make sense? So I want you to imagine a plane that's leaving LA and heading to Sydney. It's off course, gets knocked around by turbulence and having to navigate other planes, but it always ends up in Sydney. And the reason why is because the autopilot is constantly making corrections to the course to make sure that plane always lands where it's meant to. And you have an autopilot, my friend. You have an autopilot. That autopilot is your identity. More specifically, your self-image. Your self-image. If we don't learn to overhaul our self-image, we stay stuck. This is the reason that you see people going up and down on diets, always kind of struggling and going between, depths of misery and shiny object syndrome. I'm going to do keto. I'm going to do fasting. What's the next best thing? What's the next best thing? The reason is to do things is easy. That just requires a little bit of willpower. But to be something is harder. This requires patience. It requires time, because you're overhauling a program that you have operated by forever and a day. The mistake that we make is think that just because we gave up the alcohol for a month, just because we tracked our nutrition, just because we went to the gym 5 times this week, we're fine, we're good. It's a mirage, guys. The change only occurs when you manage to overhaul who you are and what you stand for. Now, this is a challenge that takes time. And there are a number of tools that we can obviously use and implement to help you along your way. But you have to be invested in this for the long term. The physical transformation journey, in terms of fat loss or building muscle, that can be really quite quick. It's amazing what happens when you bring a little bit of focus. But the mental transformation, the deeper transformation, that's full of bumps on the road where you self-sabotage, you question yourself, you ask yourself, are you good enough? You doubt yourself, you have a cluster of self-limiting beliefs that say, come on, you can't do this. And then of course, we're part of a society that tries to pull us down. The moment someone starts to exceed, all the crabs in the bucket are trying to pull him or her back down into the bucket. You see, guys, this transformation journey is a little bit deeper than what we actually think. It's not as simple as just turning up and doing your gym sessions. That'll work in the short term, but what's going to lead to the change long term is you being able to construct an identity and a visualization around what you want your life to stand for and who you are. And this just takes time. Everyone knows of these cheap building companies that erect good-looking pieces of shit and then call them a house. If you try to do the same construction in your own life and you don't build it from strong foundations, of course, 2 or 3 years down the track, stuff crumbles because it wasn't built on a quality foundation. That's what we're trying to do inside the Better Body Academy. And we're not perfect. Even with our most experienced guys, they realize that a year into their journey, they thought that they were set for life. They had all the tools that they needed, but the identity just takes a while to manifest. And sometimes you got to fall off the horse a couple of times before you go, wow, this is actually requiring a little bit of work. This is also the difference between what we do in the academy and your average personal trainer. Getting your ass kicked for an hour is good for some temporary motivation. It doesn't solve the root challenge that we all have. How do we get ourselves to do things that we aren't currently doing? That can only come from a shift in your identity. Guys, I'm going to leave the podcast there. I hope this episode kind of touches you a little bit and just gets you to perhaps bring some awareness to your own journey wherever you are, whether you're inside of the Better Body Academy or you're doing it solo. Just be mindful that it's not just what you're doing, it's who you are that counts. That's what's going to make this permanent. Now, if you want to work with either myself or my team, then send me a DM and we can potentially chat about your right fit for the Academy. But for now, it's the job of this podcast is about trying to encourage this awareness and this education around health and fitness. Because if we do this, all of a sudden, this kind of light gets shone. It gets shone on the whole industry, and we understand why this industry is really just not doing the best to help itself. Guys, I'm going to love you and leave you there. Thank you for tuning into the Better Body Academy podcast, the podcast that you come if you're sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. We will catch up with you in the next episode, and thank you so much for watching. Wolves and Warriors, thank you so much for tuning in. If this podcast is hitting the mark for you and giving you the confidence to start your own personal journey, I want you to hit me up on Facebook or head over to my Instagram at jstewart_BetterBodyAcademy and DM me with the words Better Body Academy. I want to give you the tools to permanently overhaul your mind and body without dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. Our mission is to achieve 1 million lives transformed, and you, my friend, could be next. So hit me up on Facebook or head over to my Instagram at jstewart_BetterBodyAcademy and DM me with the words Better Body Academy, and we can have a chat about whether we can help you with your transformation goals.